Order. With me this evening are Councilors Bennett and Holmes. I hope to make this an expeditious meeting. I hope to vote out 3 items and discuss briefly a 4th. So I'm just going to proceed on the docket, rather on the minutes in order. So the first motion I'd like to make pertains to the commercial vehicle ordinance. This has been around for a while, so my hope is that we can move this through. I'm going to ask to, I'm not going to waive it, I'll ask to waive the reading at the full council. From the docket of October 4th, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve the following proposed amendments to Chapter 17 zoning. To recommend to the municipal council to adopt the following proposed ordinance to 17-3.3 prohibited uses, 17-11 definitions, along with an additional / related recommended amendment to 17-3.57 table of accessory use regulations by inserting the word parking.
Second.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Council Holmes. So I don't know, as I said, this has been around. The planning board reviewed it extensively. It was there for a while, made some changes, which I don't think, they're fine. I don't think they changed anything substantially. So I am good to go, but Councilors Holmes and Bennett, I don't know if you have discussed comments.
I have a question.
Yep.
So I'm looking at paragraph B, and specifically the exemptions.
Yes.
The ordinance does not apply during the actual loading, unloading, or delivery of goods or materials, or during performance of construction, repair, alteration, remodeling, or maintenance services for any building or structure.
Yes.
What I don't see here is any other types of services that a commercial, let's say a Comcast vehicle parked in a, for some type of service or something like that, but that would not fall within the definition.
No, it's on a
of
street.
commercial vehicle.
Yeah, that would be on the street. This is 17. This is residential
On
parking.
residential
You're talking, what you're
property.
discussing would be under Chapter 10, and there is a
Okay.
provision in there.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep,
that
that's
I
a
had
Chapter
that
10
straight.
issue because of
perfect.
parking on the street. Councilor Conti?
So, Councilor, we haven't read this into the record, so the people listening to this who don't really understand what is going on. The calls that I have received are about tow trucks.
Yep.
So would you just address that issue, please?
I'd be happy to, and if you like, I'll read it in quickly when I'm done. The tow truck issue is how this all started. I know I was contacted by by 2 residents actually, about concerns with the tow truck parking on a residential area. So that's how this all came into being. You will recall the first time around that there were people who made comments about the tow truck, looking to make it exempt as like an emergency vehicle. There was a tow truck operator, a relative of a tow truck operator, and the owner of the tow truck company, if I remember correctly. And they had issues that it should be treated as an emergency vehicle, that there were time issues, et cetera, et cetera. I do not support that exemption myself. The way I understand it, and I think it's still happening, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that Chief Hegney has been very generous with letting the tow truck park in the city parking lot overnight. So that issue that originated this whole situation does not exist as far as I'm aware. So while I appreciate the concerns of these particular people, and I appreciate that their neighbors don't have an issue, my concern would be, well, what about if it was another neighbor who did not like the tow truck, So, and keep in mind, this is what I understand about this ordinance. This is a quality of life ordinance. I think, after working extensively on it with Bill McDonough, we tried to be reasonable and just establish a quality of life in the city. It is my understanding that Bill has the authority to enforce it now. Let's be clear on that. The biggest change was the adoption of the definition that we did already under the Chapter 10. But what we're trying to do here is essentially establish fairness, that everybody knows what a commercial vehicle is. It makes it easier for Bill to do his job. But I don't think this is something that the building superintendent is going to go out looking for. This is, if someone raises the issue, he can go observe the situation and decide whether or not it's violative of the parking in the residential.
So the calls that I got were about a tow truck on Holden Street and a tow truck
Yes.
at the end of Tiffany Street. Both of which are such large trucks, I doubt they would fit in this room. I mean, they're serious commercial tow trucks. As this ordinance is currently written, those tow trucks would not be allowed to be parked in a residential zone.
No, they will not.
That's what I wanted to make clear to people listening to this hearing.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Yes, that, we went over that at the first time around. We discussed that, and it did not pass in terms of being an exemption as an emergency vehicle. So no, they are included in the prohibition. It's a commercial vehicle. I'm sorry, Councilor?
I do have something.
So I very much support this, and this was because even in my area, I had a lot of delivery trucks, larger, like people that were allegedly working from home and had I think it was a 26,000-ton truck, double tires, 6 down, whatever. And they were parking it in their driveway. And then they were told they couldn't park it in the driveway by Bill McDonough. So then they parked it on the street, which you can only do for an hour. So all of this was, trying to wrap my head around. And Bill said, he says, we already have it, but we haven't said what exactly a commercial vehicle is. So that is how this started, or came beyond even the tow trucks. Because in my neighborhood, it had gotten just crazy. Even the long car haulers that have like 5 or 6, they were parking, which is just a skinny little street. So anyway, I think it's way overdue, and I think that Bill has been more than generous in his time, and Kathleen certainly too, with trying to narrow it down to what really is commercial in residential. I mean, these are residential properties we're talking about, and we're talking about their driveways. What's allowed in a residential driveway? So I think somehow we lose sight of that, and people say, well, it's their business or this or that. But like Gary said, you couldn't have a business. He wouldn't allow, when people come in and want a business in their home, anybody that has a truck that size or something, he would say, you can't have that. So they already know it, but people weren't aware that they weren't allowed to do it. So
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. I had forgotten about that other side of the why this began. But I do want to reiterate again, the phrase commercial vehicle is and was used in the ordinances. What it was not, it was not defined, which is problematic from an enforcement perspective. So this does not add anything new in terms of the jurisdiction of the building superintendent. And in fact, again, because it's defined, to me, it gives everybody a better sense of fairness, so everybody understands where we are. So it's not a substantial change, it's more of a clarification in terms of what it means. So, Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. Although I appreciate the quality of life issue and challenge, I feel like residents have the right to park whatever they want. I do. We live in a city. If somebody wants to have 10 acres of land and they want to have their own house, then they won't have neighbors. We live in a city. This is part of living in a city, and I'm not comfortable with restricting people that have a business or have an electric vehicle, like a truck, that they have an electrical business or anything like that. Since COVID, people are more so working from home. People are getting rid of office spaces to park company cars such as that. So I think this is the opposite of what we should be doing. And from the tow truck business, they would turn the lights off and they tried to be as quiet as possible. Sometimes there's a fatal accident on 95 that they're getting called to at 2 a.m. in the morning. And so the fact that there's a tow truck and they're getting that call, I do feel like that's an emergency vehicle. So I'm not comfortable offering or having a restriction for individuals in their homes. It's their property. They can park a vehicle there if they'd like.
Councilor Reynolds, I think you were first, and you, Councilor Black.
So again, I think I understand where Diane is coming from, but nonetheless, it's always been there. We weren't starting out to change the whole thing. We were only adding a description. It has always been there. Gary said himself as the planner that never has it been allowed. Now if you had, as Diana is talking about, if you had a larger piece of property and that particular vehicle had its own separate driveway or driveway that went to the back of the building, a residential area, that no one could see, that is a possibility that they could come and ask for something, you know, and they might be given that option because it's not visible to people that have paid a lot of money or not reasonable money for a private home. And I say that residential is residential. I think that they've had this here, it's worked. And again, as Councilor DeSimone has said, it's not like he's out looking for them. This is when a complaint comes in. I mean, like the people on my street made, and the whole thing with the tow trucks came out a long time ago, and with a public hearing and everything, and that was agreed that those cannot be parked in a residential area. I mean, that was a comment that was made then.
Thank you, Councilor Blair.
During the discussion, they had the owner of the tow truck company here, and I was real friendly with his stepfather, right, that passed away. But they pay $155,000-$60,000 a year to the city to the right to tow. I said that night, and I repeat it, should have somebody on call. They should be down at the truck stop where the trucks are. You know, I realize
That's a business.
they only got 15 minutes to get to an accident, but if his drivers were on call, and there's plenty of room down there for him to sack out, I think that's more than fair. I know I had problems in my neighborhood, and the neighbors were on the phone for me constantly, and they were correct. We had it's not there, she's not there anymore. In fact, the house isn't there. But they insisted on parking a trailer truck there. Right? It backed in a trailer truck on the property. And there's expensive homes in my neighborhood. And it definitely deters, and I'm sure Richard will say, if somebody's buying a house and they pull up to the house and they got a tow truck parked in the next door neighbor's yard, that price of that property just went down, or it limits the customer base. So if somebody's parking a plumbing truck, or his guy paints out of his truck, and he's good to his neighbors, you're not going to get those complaints. But when you get into large commercial vehicles, I think find a place to park it.
Thank you, Councilor Blair. Councilor Bennett?
Looking at paragraph C, it says regarding disabled vehicles, any such vehicle so disabled shall be promptly removed. Is there a grace period or something that would apply to this, or a certain amount of time? And I know it's probably in the weeds a little bit, but
No,
people will ask the question, how long can I keep my disabled?
Well, I would imagine, I mean, I would, no, we did not go so far as to decide that, but I would just use the standard of a reasonable person. Are you making efforts? I don't think the building superintendent is going to go slam somebody if AAA is running late to tow their car.
So like, hey, we got a complaint, get that moved, okay, I'm working on it, is probably
Yeah, I would just use a
sufficient.
reasonable person. I hope we haven't lost that ability. So yeah, yeah, that's what I would say.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
I just want to make one more comment. You know, we also discussed this when it came to pods. When pods first came out, it was a nightmare. People were using them as storage units in their own driveways, and that became a very large, are not small. Some of these trucks, these commercial vehicles we're designating right now, are bigger than the pods are. And, you know, it makes sense to me. You're in a residential area. That's the bottom line. If you want to have a commercial vehicle for something, then you have to find a commercial spot to, even the people on my street that had a commercial business got, well, oh, nobody's saying anything. So the next thing you know, there were 2 of them. 3 trucks all in a row, great big, loud, starting up loud because it's that other gasoline, you know, loud in the morning, 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I mean, just ridiculous. The neighbors were going wild. So, you know, I think it's it's common sense. You live in a residential neighborhood, you expect that you can see the trees through the, through the car, you know, on the other side of the car, not have a commercial vehicle that is totally blocking sight and vision for everything on the street. I think that that's what we were trying to attempt here, and I think it's more than fair. The amount of time the planning board even has spent on it was incredible. So I firmly think we should move this, pass it, and if, again, if there's an issue, if we come to find out there's still an issue, there is not anything that says we can't continue to tweak it if it needs it.
Thank you, Council Reynolds, and thank you for mentioning the planning board did vet this quite thoroughly. It was
they
there
were-
for
almost a year.
several weeks and months, yeah. So all I asked Council Reynolds and, oh, I'm sorry, Council Conti.
So since we're talking about history, we also went 9 rounds with school buses.
Yeah, also.
So before many of you joined the council, this commercial issue came up, I think, in 2012. And it was about a neighborhood that had a contractor parking a box truck in a neighborhood. And there was a lot of noise. And so the council passed a commercial vehicle and tried to base it on weight. Then along came the pods, and we went 9 rounds with pods. And then along came the school buses. We went 9 rounds with school buses. We turned down the school buses. The council voted against allowing school buses to park in residential neighborhoods. The calls that I got, the truck that's parked at the end of Tiffany Street is painted a lime color. It's kind of like the color of the straw. It is a very powerful color, and it's a very big truck. And I drove by it just to see whether or not this woman was being reasonable, reasonable mind or not, and came to the conclusion that she was being reasonable, that this is a big, ugly truck. I think that because the council decided against the school buses, and I know Councilor Holmes, you might not like this, but being in the real estate business, I kind of agree with Councilor Blair that the whole purpose of zoning is to create uniformity. Now, it could be argued that you could uniformly have commercial vehicles parked everywhere. But in a residential neighborhood, people expect to see houses and passenger cars or passenger trucks and not commercial vehicles. So I think the planning board got it right. And I think that they held true to what the spirit and intent of zoning ordinances are intended to do. And I'll be supporting the measure, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Council Conti. So, Council Holmes, I appreciate your thoughts on the matter. My hope is that we get it out of committee and we put it to the full council, and whatever happens, happens, because at this point, I just want to get a yay or a nay on it.
I'm comfortable with that. I think that Council Waterman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Council Waterman.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm just waiting.
Yep.
My turn. So it doesn't actually say road here, but for commercial vehicles, say like van size, that might be a business that they might be part of, parking on the street
Yeah.
when they have a driveway.
So, street parking is under Chapter 10.
And we did that.
This is only resident, it's Chapter 17.
Right.
It pertains to parking on residential property. If they're parking a commercial vehicle on the street and they want to park it there overnight, that's a Chapter 10 issue, which is parking on public streets and roadways. Same definition, mind you. The commercial vehicle is the same definition in both chapters, but it's a different situation there. So, I'm sorry, Council Holmes. Oh, Council Copus.
Just for clarification, there's been a couple mentions of if you're an electrician, you have your work truck, or a painter, and you have your paint truck with the writing on the side of the vehicle. My understanding is that this does not apply to those vehicles.
No, it does.
Well,
Or
I don't have the
does it?
painting on the truck has nothing to do with it. Now, there are municipalities that say if you have a commercial license plate or if you have a business displayed on the side of your car, that is not in our definition. Our definition is mostly by.
10,000 pounds or
Yes,
greater.
yes, which I do not have in front of me, but the
And that's
painting,
what I
the
was just looking.
advertising, as I recollect the definition, is not an issue. Again, we tried to carve something together from several different, there's an RMV definition, there's a DOT definition, so we tried to make a reasonable definition, not overly particular.
Right. And so, can you clarify, do those vehicles,
I'd have to get, I'd honestly have to, if you'll give me a minute, I have to get the definition. I don't have it in front of me,
okay.
so we'll have to, and it's in the current ordinances, so.
And I can read it. My
Okay.
understanding is that it does not apply to those the vehicles under 10,000 pounds.
Right, if it's like a 4x4 or something, they should be good
Or
to
a
go.
truck,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
That's my
a
understanding,
work
but I
truck?
wanted to
Yeah.
verify that,
Yep.
to make sure we're all talking about the same
yep,
thing.
thank you, Council Copus, yep. Councilor Holmes?
I think.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? So I just hope we get it out one way or another, we vote it up or down before the full council. So what I'd like to do, and I think Council Conti's request was fair, I'm going to do a quick reading of this one more time for the record. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the section 1, the language. The proposed amendment 17-3.3 prohibited use. It is A, any use, whether or not specifically or generically identified elsewhere, that is significantly hazardous, offensive, or detrimental to surrounding properties by reason of excessive glare, odor, noise, fumes, smoke, vibration, electric or electronic interference, radiation, pollution of air or water, danger of explosion or fire, or for any other similar reason shall be prohibited. B, in addition to the provisions of 17-3.57, no person, firm, association, corporation, or operator of a commercial vehicle as described in Section 10-5.13A1 or heavy commercial vehicle as described in Section 10-4.153 shall park or stand said vehicle on any residential property for more than 1 hour between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m., provided that this ordinance shall not apply, A, during the actual loading, unloading, or delivery of goods or materials, or B, during the performance of construction, repair, alteration, remodeling, or maintenance services for any building or structure on the residential property for which, if necessary, a building permit has been previously obtained, excluding emergencies. No person, firm, association, corporation, or operator of a commercial vehicle or heavy commercial vehicle shall park or stand on any residential property between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. The fact that any such vehicle specifically precluded is disabled shall not be grounds for relentement of the effect of this section, and any such vehicle so disabled shall be promptly removed by the owner or operator so as not to constitute a violation as herein set forth. C, the provisions of 17-3.3b prohibited uses shall not apply to 1, any commercial vehicles or heavy commercial vehicles associated with the lawful non-residential uses allowed by right in single residence and general residence districts. 2, any commercial vehicles or heavy commercial vehicles permitted by a home occupation special permit in single residence and general residence districts. 3, any existing commercial vehicles or heavy commercial vehicles associated with pre-existing non-conforming residential uses in single residence and general residence districts. Or 4, uses protected by Chapter 40A, Sections 2 and 3 of the Massachusetts General Laws, Dover Amendment, in single residence and general residence districts. Section 2, 17-11 definitions, commercial vehicle, any vehicle described in 10-5.13A1 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro as amended. Commercial vehicle heavy, any vehicle described in Section 10-4.153 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro as amended. Part 3, Section 17-3.5, Table of Accessory Use Regulations to add to Section 7, storage, garaging, or parking, or one or more commercial vehicles will be allowed in general residence, industrial business park, and single residence, and TOD. Oh, strike that. It's permitted in general residence, so I guess, well, you know what, strike that all. I don't think they changed the permit status. I think that what they did here was add the word parking to the table of use regulation, so it's only the words in the 7 there.
Counselor?
Yes.
The way I'm reading this chart is that storage, garaging, or parking of one or more commercial vehicles is permitted without a special permit in the industrial business park, in central business, in general business, and in planned highway business.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make that
I
clear.
don't
And
think,
not single resident,
Not single
not
resident.
single resident.
I don't-
Residential industrial.
yes, yes, I don't think that should have changed at all. What I think they did, all they did was add the word parking to the list there, storing, garaging, or parking was what they added there. Are you saying the permit is wrong, that it shouldn't be, you're saying it should be a P under single residence? Am I understanding that?
No,
What am I
this is,
missing?
Prohibited in single resident.
There should be a special permit for single residents.
it would be see, you're talking,
Table of accessory use
No, it's
regulations.
special permit. The S stands for special
Yes.
permit, and the P stands for permitted.
Right,
single
yes,
residence would
okay.
be the special permit.
yes, yes,
That's-
yes, yes.
It
You're
would
right.
be easier if it said SP.
Yes, yes, thank you for that, right. But again, in my recollection, my conversation with Gary was that they just added the word parking there, and they did not change the uses. Does that comport with your understanding?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I mean,
so that's the reading of the motion. So can we get a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 3-0. Now, relatedly, there was an older version, and I'm not sure if I have to make a motion here, Vice President Clovis, you can advise. The previous language had carried over. I would just like to strike that all. Would you like me to do it in a motion? Where it says previous iteration, this was a prior version before it went to the planning board and came back in a different form.
Yeah, you can just strike that.
Okay.
That would work.
So do I have to, I don't have to read it, right? Okay. So I'd like to move to strike from from our minutes, the previous iteration that was previously in the traffic committee, the amendment to 17-3.3.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good, thank you. That just cleans that up. Okay. Moving right along, item 2. I'd like to vote out also,
And what, just to keep track, what page is the previous one
on page 20. That's the language I just struck, the previous iteration.
It says add A before the existing.
Got it.
Next up on my list, I'll take them in order. The parking issue, the public hearing is still open, so I want to, on page 21, pertaining to the designer selection policy and ordinance amendment, on page 21, I'm going to make a motion, and then I'm going to move to make a minor amendment to it. I guess I'll have to read this all in. From the docket of September 6, 2022, I entertain a motion to adopt the following design selection procedures, MGL Chapter 7C, Section 44-58, in accordance with Section 2-16, Designer Selection Procedure in the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro. City of Attleboro Designer Selection Procedures. 1. These procedures govern the selection of designers subject to the State Designer Selection Law, MGL Chapter 7C, Sections 44-58. These procedures shall apply to contracts where design services for any building, construction, reconstruction, alteration, remodeling, or repair project with both an estimated design fee of $30,000 or more and an estimated construction cost of $300,000 or more, when either the estimated design fee is less than $30,000 or the estimated construction cost is less than $300,000. It is not subject to the designer selection law or this procedure. 2, the mayor shall conduct the designer selection process for the City of Attleboro. The mayor may delegate any duties described herein to the extent such delegation is permissible by law. 3, the mayor shall designate the group of individuals herein referred to as the committee who will conduct this designer selection process. No member of the committee shall participate in the selection of a designer for any project if the member or any member of the or any of the member's immediate family. A, has a direct or indirect financial interest in the award of the design contract to any applicant. B, is currently employed by or is a consultant to or under contract to any applicant. C, is negotiating or has an arrangement concerning future employment or contracting with any applicant. Or D, has an ownership interest in or is an officer or director of any applicant. 4, the committee shall be comprised of city employees or board commission members with a background or responsibilities in the general topic being considered. 5, a request for qualifications RFQ for each contract subject to these procedures shall be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation in the locality of the building project. in the Central Register, published by the Secretary of Commonwealth, and in any other place required by the Attleboro Municipal Council at least 2 weeks before the deadline for filing applications. 6, the advertisement shall contain the following information. A description of the project, including the specific designer services sought, the time period within which the project is to be completed, and if available, the estimated construction cost. B, if there is a program for the building project, a statement of when and where the program will be available for inspection by applicants. C, when and where a briefing session, if any, will be held. D, the qualifications required of applicants. E, the categories of designers, consultants, if any, for which applicants must list names of the consultants they may use. F, whether the fee has been set or will be negotiated. If the fee or a maximum fee has been set, the amount of the fee must be listed in the advertisement. G, when and where the RFQ can be obtained and the applications must be delivered. 7, the RFQ shall include the current standard designer application form. For municipalities and public agencies not within DSB jurisdiction, the application form may be amended to include additional information on a project-specific basis. 8, the committee shall evaluate applicants based on the following criteria. A, prior similar experience. B, past performance on public and private projects. C, financial ability. D, identity and qualifications of the consultants who will work with the applicants on the project. And E, any other criteria that the committee considers relevant to the project. 9, the committee shall select at least 3 finalists when possible. Finalists may be required to appear for an interview. Applicants listed consultants be barred pursuant to MGL Chapter 49, Section 44C shall be included as a finalist on the list. The list must be accompanied by a written explanation of the reasons for selection, including the recorded vote, if any. The written recorded vote, if any, shall be public records and shall be maintained in the contract file. 11, if the fee was set, select a designer from the list of finalists. If the mayor selects a designer other than the one first by the committee, the mayor shall file a written justification for the selection with the committee, copy in the contract file. It is to be negotiated. Final may exclude any designer from the list. The committee shall request a fee proposal from the first designer and begin contract negotiations if the mayor is unable to negotiate a satisfactory fee in order in which they were ranked by the committee until agreement is reached. Set by the prior to the selection of final, the following. A, certification of the designer or construction manager or entity any gift, contribution, or offer of employment as an consultant to or subcontractor for or construction manager. The designer or construction manager has been retained or hired by the designer or construction manager to solicit for, or corporation or other entity be paid a fee or other consideration contingent upon the award of the contract to the designer. And D, 30, Section 39 RC, and that the designer has filed and will continue to file an audited financial statement as is required by MGL Chapter 30, Section 39 RD. All fees shall be stated in design contracts, and in any subsequent amendments thereto as a total dollar amount. Contracts may provide for equitable adjustments in the event of changes in scope or services. 16, the City of Attleboro shall not enter into a contract for design services unless the City of Attleboro or the designer has obtained professional liability insurance covering negligence arising out of the performance of the contract. The total amount of such insurance shall at a minimum equal the lesser of $1 million or 10 the City of Attleboro may require for the applicable period of limitations. A designer required by the City of Attleboro to obtain all or own expense shall furnish a certificate or certificates of insurance coverage to the City of Attleboro prior to the award of the contract. 17, every contract for design services shall include a provision that the designer or its consultant shall not be compensated for any services involved in preparing changes that are required for additional work that should have been anticipated by the designer in the preparation of the bid documents as reasonably determined by the individual emergency that precludes the normal use of these designer selection procedures. The mayor may elect to authorize expedited procedures to address the emergency. The mayor shall document in writing the reasons for the emergency declaration, the proposed scope of work, the estimated cost of construction, the established fee for the needed design services, and any other relevant information. The mayor may select 3 finalists from any standing list of designers who have applied for projects of a similar nature, or may otherwise select 3 designers to be considered as finalists for the project. The mayor shall rank the finalists in order of qualification and select the designer for the emergency work. 19, the City of Attleboro shall publish the name of any designer awarded a contract in the Central Register. 20, the following record shall be kept by the City of Attleboro. A, all information supplied by or obtained about each applicant. B, all actions taken relating to the project. And C, any other records related to the designer selection. All records shall be available for inspection by the State Designer Selection Board and other authorized agencies. 21, the City of Attleboro shall evaluate designers' performance on contracts using the Designer Selection Board evaluation forms in accordance with MGL Chapter 7C, Section 48H, and file completed evaluations with the board and any other agency named in MGL Chapter 7C, Section 48H. 22, nothing in these procedures shall be interpreted to require the establishment of a board or waive or reduce the requirements of any other applicable law or regulation. 23, for municipal design or construction project that includes funding provided by the Commonwealth in whole or in part, such as reimbursements, grants, and the like, the City of Attleboro must incorporate minority-owned business enterprise and women-owned business enterprise participation goals. If applicable, the City of Attleboro shall take steps to ensure that it complies with all supplier diversity requirements.
Second.
Thank you. Apologies for that, friends. Apologies. Anyway, it's now read in. This, from what I understand in the communication, is a pro forma template. I think Jeremy said he may have tweaked it, so it's standard fare for this type of thing. I would move to make one small amendment based upon Jeremy's presentation on page 22, line 4. The committee shall be comprised of city employees or, I think we should change that to and or, so as to not be constricted to one or the other. Jeremy agreed, you may recall. So I would entertain a, thank you. Okay, so the motion is seconded by Councillor Bennett. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I have
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, Councillor Bennett.
Just paragraph 14 on 23.
Yep.
It references the requirements for selecting a designer or compliance with the statutory requirements under Chapter 7C. I just wanted to note that it says, including those set forth in MGL Chapter 7C, Section 54A, little I.
Mm-hmm.
But little I is not where it ends. There's actually 5 Roman numerals under that section. So I think this may have been an error, like a typo, where it only selected the first one of the 5, but I think maybe it should just say Section 54A.
Okay, all right.
Well, we gotta do
Good
the
point.
motion.
Let's just vote on the amendment to item 4, to change the or to an and or.
Oh, yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. Okay. Councilor Bennett, now on to page 23, paragraph 14. So do I understand that you want to move to strike the little I?
Yes.
That sounds fair. And I don't have the MGL. You've looked at the whole
I
MGL?
have it. I
Okay.
have it up, yes.
Okay, I'll take that.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we struck the little I. Any other thoughts, concerns? Council Holmes?
Thank you. So I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around this. So designer selection law. It's kind of wild that we just built the high school and now we're doing this. Like this kind of seems, and then it seems so similar to the municipal building, is it committee or commission
Yes,
that we have?
Yep.
So the couple questions I have, actually, number 4, that we just made an adjustment to. Is it similar that the administration brings the person and then the council confirms them?
No. And again, I don't think so. I'm going to give you my opinion. Jeremy was here. I did not ask him. My understanding of this could very much be the MBC.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't have to be the MBC. And if I remember, and everybody else can jump in if you remember Jeremy's comments, I think the committee under this that the mayor puts together could be the MBC and other people.
Okay.
Or it could be other people, were the mayor so inclined. That's how I took Jeremy's comments. Because I think, who's the woman's name that works, Carol Brown, often helps the MBC with these things. So for example, the mayor say it's the MBC and Carol Brown, and that's going to be the committee.
Okay, so it may be under that umbrella.
Yes.
Is how they- okay.
Could be the MBC, the way I understood it, could be MBC, could be other folks. But I don't frankly see why it wouldn't be the MBC, but.
Okay.
But if you want me to confirm my interpretation, I'll be more than happy to do that.
I just wanted to know if the council was involved at all in the confirmation of members.
No,
But
these are
doesn't that
not.
sound like it? Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think this is in terms of like an appointment. But again, does anybody else have reason to think this would be anyway like an appointment?
No, but I had questions that, which I was going to say, but go along with what Councilor Holmes is saying. Why would we need this if we've been using the Municipal Building Commission? And did they have, what was their feeling of this? Like, what is the addition for? Where does that leave them? And now do we have two people kind of overlooking similar projects? And that's my concern. I'm just confused why all of a sudden this was.
So just reading the material before the motion, it's required by law that you have
Yes.
a written policy in place to, I think, basically so that there's no
But I haven't seen.
patronage, no favorability in your
Right.
selection, et cetera, et cetera.
But
So,
somewhere in here, I would think that the building commission would be, the municipal building commission would
well, not
be-
every municipality might not have that, I would imagine, like they may have a different group. So I
But
think,
this is for us.
yes, it is, it is.
Should that be in there somewhere? Is my question.
I
Like, where?
suppose, Council Reynolds, we could suggest that they say that, but I would think that that's who it's probably gonna be, but the administration might wanna have the opportunity to have other folks involved as well. So, we could say that and specify it, but I think I think what they're trying to do here is there may be a situation where it may be NBC and other folks, but if you want clarification, I will get it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to follow up on it? I mean, I don't have to rush this through.
No.
Okay. You good?
I'll do it myself.
Okay.
I'll ask myself.
All right, fair enough. And if you change your mind, let me know, because I can have it for the floor next week. Councilor Bennett?
My recollection from Jeremy speaking to the council was that this was to address how the MBC would proceed. Really, it's written for them, to give them those written procedures. Whether or not the city brings in others to assist, I'm not sure. What I understand your concern about is, could a mayor then set up a separate group of people and bypass the MBC? I would be concerned about that as well. And so I think that's a good clarification to get before the full council votes on this, just to ensure that we're not creating a situation where that might happen.
Council Conti?
Right along those exact lines, I'd like you to focus on item number 22 on page 25. We're talking about projects that are $30,000 in design or $300,000 more in expense. And this says that nothing in this procedure shall be interpreted to require the establishment of a board or waive or reduce the requirements of any other applicable law or regulation. I'd like to take that out because we do have a municipal building commission. And we do have a process where the Municipal Building Commission vets the projects, and this ordinance transfers a lot of power to the mayor away from the Municipal Building Commission that's done a fine job. So 22 is alarming to me, that I think it should be removed. So I'm going to make a motion to amend the ordinance to remove section 22.
All right, well, inasmuch as it's in committee, I would ask one of two things. One, I'll sit on it, get the information before we vote out of committee.
Right, I can't do that, I'm not in your committee.
Right, yes,
take
I know.
that back.
Or two, we vote it out and I address these issues on the floor. Do you have a preference? Well, I'll keep it in committee.
I think so.
Fine, it's not a rush item, it's fine. Okay, so for the record, I want to clarify with the administration what they perceive to be the role of the MBC in this policy. And it's some of this body's feelings that they should be specifically named in this document. Fair? Okay, all right. Then I think I made a motion that I then need to,
I'll withdraw my second.
yes, thank you. All right, so I report back on the designer, then I'll hold off as well on the ordinance amendment because they go together. All right, next up on my list is, okay, we'll get to the marijuana thing. So I had asked to be first tonight because I had hoped to have Gary here. Gary had a personal commitment that he couldn't get out of. But I did want to report a couple of things. We're still waiting for the planning board vote, so I wasn't going to move too far on this tonight. Gary should be here on November 8th with, and we should have the planning board vote by that point as well. So I anticipate we're all going to have questions for Gary. And one of the things I did reach out to him about was the discussion we had last week, I think Council Cobus initiated, about this process, the period between. If there's an existing retailer who wants to open a new shop,
I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt because.
Oh,
if
I'm
we're
sorry,
going to
Council
discuss
Bennett.
this-
Yes, go. Sorry,
Thank you.
I forgot again.
Appreciate it, thanks.
I think she's gone. So Council Cobus had asked about that period, which I guess we can refer to as a transition period. And I learned from Gary a couple of things, and I learned a couple of things recently, that there is a state, and some of you may know this, you guys were on the first time. The state limits the number of retail licenses that a particular business can have to 3. 3 anywhere in the state. So if there's a business here who already has 3 and wants to move, they're going to find themselves in a little bit of a conundrum. I have not resolved yet that process for a business that may be in that situation. And I don't know if we can, frankly, but yes, Councilor Reynolds.
So I thought about this a little bit more after this. So I think that anybody that wants to move, that's already in the city, but they're looking to move to a business section, is going to do what they have to do. They're going to apply. They will get a site, it's a site application, basically. They're not opening a new business. They're looking for a site, and then they're going to transfer, they're going to get out of what they do have and move their business. That's what they move. So I guess my question would be, as I'm thinking about this, it's just like, you have to have a permit of occupancy before they can actually give you, you have to be up and operational before you can get the permit or anything. So I'm thinking, let's say it's either Zahara or it's Nova, and they decide, okay, we're going to move down to Route 1. We found something. We're going to apply. We're going to put in our site. Even if they get the okay for the site, they're not operational.
No, they're not.
So they still only have one permit.
It's a whole new special permit. They're applying for another
They're
special
applying
permit.
for-
It's not
they're
just a site. It's
But that's a question then. That's a question, because they are applying for a site change. The people that, yes, they will be. That's what I'm saying. Somehow we don't have that correctly here, because they're looking to transfer out of industrial.
Councilor Reynolds, I respectfully, they're not transferring anything. That was my confusion, and when I called Gary,
But
he's
is
like,
that because we don't have it right? Maybe we didn't.
No, it's because the special permit is with the land. It's site-specific. So if Company A has a business here, they have a special permit for business A. If they want to open a second shop, they have to initiate a whole new procedure for a whole new special.
But they're not looking to open a second shop.
Yes.
No, they
Well,
aren't. No, they aren't. They
well,
know they can't be allowed. They know this already at the state level. So something in the process is incorrect, and maybe that's a state issue.
Well, that's going to be a Gary issue.
That's
And,
a Gary
While I
state issue.
disagree with you, I think we should wait for the expert to get here, because my understanding does not match yours, but that's why I think Gary needs to be here, because I
And
run the
I would
impression they need
say-
a whole separate special
And
permit.
I would say the understanding of the people that are already in industrial think that that's what it is. So somewhere, there's a miscommunication about what it is. If you're only looking for a site change, which is what they are, they're not looking for
permit
another
is not-
permit. They're not,
Councilor Reynolds, a permit is not portable. It stays with the site. It is site-specific. That's why we do
but
all
they're
the
going to
checks
close
about.
the site, but they can't move to a new site
I know they can't.
till it's open.
Councilor Reynolds, I appreciate their conundrum. I do, and this has been on my mind, and that's why and I understand what you're saying, and I understand the situation. And while the state limits the number of retail licenses, we don't, right? We don't care how many this one or that one has. I have no interest in that myself. But the question is, I don't know if we can do what you're proposing. Well,
No, I'm
strike
not
that. I don't know that we have anything
I
to
don't
do.
know. I'm just saying,
They
I'm
have to
not
apply for
proposing.
another one and hope that there's one available when they apply.
I'm not proposing anything.
But-
I think there's some disconnect, and maybe it's the local city stuff that we have is in a disconnect with the state. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the attorneys for these companies, as well as whatever the city is planning, has to be ironed out, because it makes no sense if they're only they're not keeping the other one open.
They would keep it open, and then they could close it when the second special permit was approved. They would,
Well, they do it right, that's
they
right,
would
they
close
do
it
it
that day.
immediately,
That's
but
right.
that's all right.
But those are two separate
But,
special
but they're
permits.
not, they're still not it's not operational. If only the site is agreed upon, and they're not operational, then what do you have? You have nothing, you just have a site. There's nothing going on in
They
there.
could in Attleboro have two operational sites. We have no issue with that in this city.
The city has that, but these people know they can't do it.
So what no, and I appreciate your thoughts, Sarah. I'm not
I
looking to
just
argue
think
with you.
that really.
That's why we're going to get Gary in here, because I learned a
Has
few
to be
things.
clear.
My expectations were surprised. Forgive me.
Why don't you wait, get Gary in? Because I have an opinion on it.
Yeah, well,
I
we
don't-
know what your opinion is.
I don't want to muddy the waters,
let's-
but
yeah.
when that gentleman was here, and I use that term loosely, right? When he was here, he was looking for a retail site so he wouldn't have to compete with Rhode Island. That, he wasn't going to give up that site down in the industrial park to go and sell to Attleboro somewhere. He was looking for a store to sell retail out of.
I want to be
But they
clear.
know they still they can only have 3 in the state. So I'm saying, when does that become operational? Is that when it becomes the change, when it's operational? Or is it just that's what I'm saying.
Ask Gary.
That's what I
We'll have
want to
Gary
know.
come.
That's what I want to know.
Yes, Councilor Harris.
All right, thank you. This is Ruth. I just think, I love that Gary's gonna come down. I don't know, though, about having a guest on an election night. Sometimes we shy away
Right.
from that. We shy away from
Oh,
kind of having.
don't- I know we don't have
Because,
hearings.
because usually,
No public hearing.
it's not a public hearing, but I still feel like that residents might want to, I don't know, we usually do try to make that meeting not heavy with kind of guests and things like that. And it's just something to consider. It depends how much interest you think that there will be for this or not. I don't want to hold anything up, but at the same time.
Well, we did have the public hearing on the issue already, so this is just for us, because these are complicated issues. Clearly, clearly, we need to get, so I'm okay with that, but if anybody has a strong,
I'll defer to you. The rule is no public hearings.
okay.
So
Is he gonna speak at committee of the whole? Because
no, he's gonna come before the ordinance committee to talk about the
Oh,
marijuana.
so not next week, the week after.
The 8th.
The
Yes.
8th, November 8th.
Election night.
Yep. And that, by then, we'll have the planning board vote, so they may also have some insight on these issues that we're talking about. I'm sorry, Vice President Copus.
I'll defer to you.
Yep.
The ruling is that there's no public hearing, so
Yep.
having him come before us is legal. and allowed.
So I'm going to hand around an email exchange between Gary and I about people in the queue, because I want to know how the process is, who's in the queue, and I'm going to forward to you a spreadsheet that has to do with when we deferred taxes, property taxes for eligible seniors. This would allow utility charges billed by the city to be deferred. So we had the public hearing on the Mass General Law that we have to adopt to effectuate this change.
Second.
Thank you. Well, I should read the motion first.
Okay.
But from the docket of February 15th, 2022, to 42I and 42K to enhance the votes from December 17th, 2019 regarding the deferral of taxes for all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. And that concludes my...
Okay, I would call the License Committee to order at 7:56. And I would entertain a motion to approve the following Class 1 license renewal application from Courtesy Auto Group, Inc., DBA Courtesy Kia Mitsubishi, 11 and 16 Scott Street, for 32 customer parking spots and 172 display spaces.
Second.
Thank you. Well, I went down and I talked to their owner, and everything is laid out very neatly, very clearly. And I have no problem with this. I would recommend passing it. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, none. Vote passes, 3-0. And also from the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain to approve the following 7 Class 2 license renewal applications from the following. Tri-County Auto Sales, 1850 County Street, for 4 customer parking spaces, 5 display spaces. I'll read all of them here. C&A Millennium Motors, Inc., 1844 County Street for 10 customer parking spaces and 8 display spaces. Bristol County Auto Sales, Inc., 227 Pine Street for 10 customer parking spaces, 10 display spaces. East Coast Auto Sales, Inc., 24 Rice Street, 14 customer parking spaces and 40 display spaces. Your Mechanic, Inc., DBA Better Auto at 473 Washington Street for 10 customer parking spaces, 4 display spaces. North Main Street Auto Division of K&L Tire and Automotive Company, Inc., 44 North Main Street for 17 customer parking spaces, 1 display space. And Blue and White Motors, Inc., 1815 County Street for 4 customer parking spaces and 15 display spaces.
Second.
Thank you. So I went to all these places. I spoke to the owners, or in one case, a manager, and everything's in order. I had no issues with any of them, and I would recommend passing them. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye, and I am an aye, and 3-0 we pass. And one more item. In the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve the following Class 3 license renewal application from Tri-County Auto Sales, 1850 County Street for 4 customer parking spaces and 6 display spaces. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I was there today. Manny was on vacation, so it took a little while. And everything is fine. He's perfectly in order. Any discussion?
None.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye, and none opposed. Vote passes 3-0. And I would call for an adjournment.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote passes 3-0. We are adjourned. And that concludes the business of the License Committee. Call for a meeting at the next appropriate time. Thank you.
Public Works Committee is canceled tonight.
I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order at 8 o'clock. Sitting on this committee are Councilors Clovis and Councilor Reynolds. I have 8 matters to bring before you this evening. First, from the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve the expending of an earmark grant from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs in the amount of approximately $125,000.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. I think this one we can thank Representative Jim Hawkins for earmarking this in some legislation, but this will cover the cost of the senior center design and feasibility study. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
May I make just one interjection?
may.
Thank you. Actually, it's Senator Polfini.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected.
It's okay.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. From the docket of November 1st, 2022, entertain a motion to transfer $6,945 from account 1124100-578300 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1541100-524011 Council on Aging Maintenance of Buildings.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. We really don't have much to say on this one. The elevator in the senior center needs to get some attention, and without it, they can't use it, and that disables the entire second floor for most patrons. Is there any questions, comments? Seeing none, motion's in order. I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. From the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to transfer $3,000 from account 1124100-578300 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1141100-511000 Assessors Salaries.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. I say kudos to City Assessor Julie Hobson for taking note of the message we put in the budget message to the mayor regarding municipal succession And I think this is the first instance that I recall in nearly 14 years of when a department head is actually thinking ahead and bringing someone in before someone leaves on a retirement so that they can learn the job before the person leaves. How smart is that? Why hasn't this happened before? Because no one's been talking about succession planning. So I would encourage your support of this measure, and that concludes my comments. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, motion's in order. I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. On the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to authorize the school department to pay the previous year's school bills totaling $27,873.87 as identified in Mr. Furtado's communications.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. I have attended at least 15 school finance committee meetings. And I have to say that my opinion of Mr. Furtado is that he is an absolute master of controlling that budget. However, he has several hundred people who have the ability to spend money at the end of the year that he has no control over them receiving the bills on time and getting the payments processed on time. This can happen to anyone in city government. It's happened to me personally. So, what I can tell you is that I have a high degree of faith that these expenditures are proper and that the bills are due and should be paid. And that concludes my comments. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. From the docket of October 18, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve the transfer of $92,000 from account 11241-000-578-380 Citywide Reserve Fund for Capital to account 151-000-587-065 Health Purchase Vehicles for the purchase of 2 vehicles, tentatively Ford Explorers for the Health Department, consistent with the city's green community policy.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. I met with Beth and Allison this week, and I went through all of my issues, and they resolved them. And I am pleased that they're going to purchase 2 Ford Explorers that are Pursuit hybrid 4-wheel drive vehicles that are being purchased from MHQ, which is the state approved vendor for vehicles. It's where we buy our police vehicles. And in fact, because of the market right now, these are in fact police vehicles that they will be receiving. So they look just like our police cars, except they won't be blue and white. They'll be white and they'll be decorated with health department graphics. But what I'm pleased about is that they're hybrid and they're only going to cost $40,678 a piece. Try to buy a new vehicle today for less than $40,000. It's impossible. So there's a 10% contingency in here for the labeling and the delivery, which is extra. But I'm very pleased with the purchase price and the process of which they selected these vehicles, and I would encourage your support. That concludes my comments. Are there any other comments or questions or conclusions? Seeing none, the motion's in order. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. From the docket of October 4th, 2022, I entertain a motion to adopt a dual system of classification for real estate taxation in accord with appropriate Massachusetts general laws.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. It's a fact that once you go split, it's very difficult to go back to a single rate. In the city of Attleboro, it would cost a typical average residential taxpayer $700, which is politically unfavorable and certainly not going to pass this council. So the dual system of classification, as unfair or undemocratic as it may seem, established by Proposition 2.5, is most appropriate for Attleboro at this time. That concludes my comments. I'll take any other comments or questions from anyone on the council. Seeing none, the motion's in order. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. From the docket of October 4th, 2022, I entertain a motion to adopt a classification factor of 1.3 for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. When I joined the council, the tax rate split was 1.25. And that's midway between a single tax rate of 1.0 and the maximum tax rate of 1.5. So 1.25 was the sweet spot on the council for a large number of years after 1982. Slowly, and this is not just Attleboro, but many communities in Bristol County have slowly been experiencing a wider gap from that 1 to 1.5, transferring the tax liability from the residences to the commercial. Of course, the reason why is because residential taxpayers vote and commercial, industrial, personal property taxpayers do not vote. So in many communities looking to alleviate increasing taxes, what the communities have been doing is they've been pushing up the tax split, making it more and more unfair towards businesses. I have a problem with that because I'm an assessor and I'm a former business owner, and I don't think that commercial properties should be paying 50% more as a tax rate than residential taxpayers. I think that 25% is the sweet spot where there's some fairness involved. And being where we are now at 1.36, away from 1.25, I selected 1.3 as a midpoint, and that concludes my comments. Councilor Cobus.
Thank you, and I appreciate those comments. And this would be changing it to, like you said, we're at 1.36 now. Your suggestion is to change this and vote it out at 1.30. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that if we voted out of committee at 1.30, next week when it's before the full council and we have our discussions, if we can't reach a consensus at the full council, it then passes at what we voted out of committee at, which is 1.3, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Tax classification has to be a majority vote from the city council. So the majority of the city council would have to vote for 1.3.
Yeah, that's just to get it out of committee, Todd.
That's right.
We've been here before, we've hashed
Chair
it.
recognizes Councilor Blair.
I'm sorry, but,
You have the floor,
Richard,
sir.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
You have the floor, go right ahead.
We've hashed this over on this floor during a regular meeting, up, down, sideways, whatever. It's changeable on the floor. You can amend what he brings out once it gets to the floor.
That's correct. So Councilor Cobus.
So I'm aware that we can change it when we discuss it before the full council. I will follow up and try to verify, because my understanding was whatever it's voted out of committee, if we can't reach an agreement before the full council, that's what it ends up as. Now, I could be very wrong, but that was my understanding, and I will follow up during the week.
Okay, good.
But
Thank you
that's
for
my
doing that.
understanding.
Thank you for volunteering to do that.
So my concern, we're at 1.36 now. Residential are evaluated out too much today. But the one thing I will mention is that in the actual tax bill that they receive, based on the median commercial value. So at anything less than 1.42 for the average. And that's, so we could talk about the tax rate, and that's good to talk about, but the thing is the actual bill that they get in the mail and what that is. Because one of the things Julie mentioned was that we'll run out of shift because of inflation. It's been working out. But my suggestion is that we vote it out as 1.36 today, and then we can have, but I think voting it out at 1.30 is dangerous tonight.
based on a replacement cost new less depreciation, whether it's commercial or residential. So they're all evaluated the same. But there are different forces affecting that are different than the forces affecting residential. And I think maybe that's what you were trying to say.
No, there's the income evaluation.
There is the
correct?
income approach on commercial that doesn't apply to residential.
Correct.
Correct.
That's what I was talking about.
Okay,
And that's why commercial has stayed flat.
very good. I
Largely.
think I saw Councilor Holmes next, and then Councilor, and then Councilor.
Thank you. So I'm concerned because that would give residents a 7% increase and it would, the business side would go down 8%. And that's, it's 8.3, it would go down for commercial and then it would increase for residents, 7%. So I am concerned about the 1.3 shift. That concludes my comments.
Does that conclude your
Yes,
comments?
thank you.
Okay. Councilor Nolan, you were next.
So I agree with Counselor Cobus. I'm nowhere near 1.3, nowhere near 1.3. And, you know, if you look at our own tax class report, when you talk about commercial properties, it says, you know, another factor in our own tax classification committee from the report from that committee. So it says typically residential values are determined by looking at comparable sales. Commercial and industrial properties are typically assessed by the income approach. So that tends to produce a consistent rate for business properties as opposed to market fluctuations with the residential. So they are different. And then, you know, like we were discussing before we even started, the 46, like I said, the 46% in personal property that went up, that is part of the new growth, 46% of the personal property in commercial. That leaves 53.8% for residential. So, I mean, that's almost a 50-50 split that was added in new growth. And to go to 1.3 is, I'm nowhere near it, and I realize that I'm not on this committee, and I want to reiterate that I am not comfortable with the 1.3 whatsoever, and I realize we can change it on the fly, but there's a tremendous amount of factors that need to be discussed before we get that close to the 1.25 that you're hoping for eventually. I guess that concludes my comments for now.
So if I can correct you on just one point that is inaccurate in your report. In the commercial sector, the only businesses that are appraised on an income approach are leasehold interests. If you are an owner-occupied business in the city of Attleboro, you are taxed on a replacement cost no less depreciation, not on an income approach. So if you're leasing property to others, you are definitely going to be taxed on an income approach to valuation. And there has to be compatibility among those that are taxed on the income approach, just like there has to be compatibility on the replacement cost no less depreciation. Yes.
Well, I don't disagree. Owner occupied, I mean, how many, I'd like to know the percentage of that, because if we were to go to 1.3, we're giving, pardon me, excuse me, let me just get to that page. We're helping Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, all these, the utility companies, Mass Electric, who's raising their prices by, I don't know, I think it was 64% that I heard.
Yeah.
So we're saving them millions. All of these folks right here that we're gonna save millions. You can't tell me that, and again, I'm just saying this as small businesses, I'm not referring to their owners in any way, shape, or form. We're not helping Chubb's, we're not helping Burgundian, we're not helping Mochi, or we're not if we truly want to help small businesses, then we need to come up with a different plan or a different committee, because you can guarantee that if we give them a 50% break, you know that their rents aren't going down. There's no way that they're gonna say, oh, you know what, the council decided this and we're gonna bring your rates down. So this is who we're helping. Massachusetts Electric, New England Power Company, Bristol Place, Eversource, Gas, you know, and the list goes on and on for our top 10. We'll be saving them millions. We're not gonna be helping Chubbs, Burgundian, Mochi, anybody else that we really wanna help. So, and I have zero interest in doing that, and that concludes my comment.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Council Reynolds, you were next, then Council DeSimone.
I know that Julie talked about the 1.42, and sooner or later we're going to run out of shift. And I think most times when we bring it out of committee, when we've ever brought it out, we've brought it out either at what it was, which right now is 1.36, and then we hassle it out on the floor at the full committee. And sometimes we got, prior to Julie, who did not give us a number, she never tells us what she thinks we should do, where our former assessor did. He would throw a number out there, and maybe we brought that number out. But I have to admit, I am nowhere near the 1.30, and I would like to see us bring it out at 1.36. If we could amend it, bring it out at 1.36, where we are right now, and then let everybody hassle it out at the committee of the whole. I would feel
That
comfortable
conclude
with
your comments?
that.
Council DeSimone.
Thank you, Council Conti, for letting me speak in your committee. So every year I go through the same process of figuring out where I am, what do I want to do, what my objectives are, and what is tax classification out. And it is not, to me, about helping anybody. It's about fairness, it's about equity. But I realize that fairness and equity varies from person to person, from political party to another, to business-minded and small business-minded to residents. So one of the reasons I like the tax policy that was enacted under the guidance of Mayor Dumas several years ago, the signatories of whom are business owners, Nancy Young, Mr. Bill Larson's on this committee,
Castro.
Jim Castro, Paul Denisi, and Attorney Jacoby. And I find this, every time I read this, I'm like, oh, thank God for this policy, because what they do is they realize that fairness and equity may vary from year to year, depending upon who you're talking to and what the situation is. So what they aim for is predictability. And I can get on board with predictability, because how do you balance a budget at home? You predict your expenses and you set your budget accordingly. To me, what is most fundamentally important is, number one, that we do this exercise every year, not referencing prior years, because none of that matters. It does not matter what the rate was last year or 10 years ago. It doesn't matter, because we are where we are now in this economy where the housing market, sir, as you well know, was off the charts. It was unprecedented. I don't know anybody that could afford the rate. Was an 11% increase? I don't know anybody that could afford to pay for the rate incurred in the last year of the housing values out of it. I mean, how many of us have looked at our values of our homes and been, holy cow, how is my house worth that? Anyway, I say all that to say, I'm going to stick with the policy which puts predictability ahead of everything else. And that predictability is based on the increase in the levy, the percentage of increase in the levy, which is 466%. So I'm with Council Cobus. I'm up in the 1.4s. There's no way I would support a 1.30 if it comes out of your committee at that. I will not support anything beneath 1.36. And I'm looking 1.38, 1.40 for all the reasons I mentioned. And to echo Councilor Dolan's sentiments, if you look at the top taxpayers, these are multi and sometimes billion-dollar businesses. I am not, and I'm not trying to do anybody any favors, but I'm certainly, that's not my idea of helping business there at all. If we want to truly help our small businesses, we need to, A, find out who they are, where they are, because most of them don't own the properties that they're in, and target specific relief. I think we need to have a tax committee. I know we had the senior tax committee, but what we do in one group affects every group. So it occurred to me, why do we have a senior tax committee? Because if you do something for seniors, you're ipso facto impacting everybody else who pays taxes. You follow my lead? I'm going to maybe propose we have an ad hoc council committee to discuss some of these issues in depth, because every year I ask the same questions of our assessor. What do you think of small business exemption? What do you think of the residential exemption? These are things that every year have to be re-examined, because every year the context is different. So I appreciate your discussion about the past, and if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have been with you, like, I want to nudge it down. Because I do think it's important to have people feel the true value of their homes, if you will. But under the current circumstances, where industrial property alone, a personal property strike that has increased by 74 million, where our own assessor said and acknowledged that it was, let me just find her language. She said something to the effect that there was a considerable increase in personal property, which may be a pole or a cell phone tower, that I'm not quite sure all the residents should have to bear the impact of that. So for all those reasons and more, I'm not coming close to 130, not even 136. I'm up. So thank you, Chair Conti.
Councilor Cobus, you have the floor.
Thank you. So, speaking of the policy, and I like that policy, the increase to the total increase to our levy is 4.66%. And so, in theory, everybody's bill should go up 4.66%, roughly, but the policy says because residential makes up the vast majority of the levy, we should sort of normalize to make the residential increase by that. If we go to 1.30 for the median single-family home, the increase would be a 7% increase to the bill they receive. And for the median commercial or industrial tax bill, the decrease would be 8.3%. That does not feel fair to me. Based on the policy, we should move to a shift of 1.42, which would mean the median single-family tax bill would increase by 4.64%, which is close to the 4.66, and the percent change for commercial would be 0.1%. So essentially, commercial stays flat if we go to 1.42. However, based on what Julie said, the assessor, about being concerned about running out of room for the shift, and I think the policy makes sense, but maybe as we get closer to 1.5, we don't need to jump quite to 1.42, and we should sort of back that out a little bit to make sure we have room and we're planning for the future next year. So based on that, I move to amend the suggestion from 1.30 to 1.40.
Second.
Okay, so we're now at 1.40. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say, I'll do a roll call vote. All in favor, let me call Councilor Cobus first. Cobus?
Yes?
Yes. Holmes? I'm sorry, Reynolds?
Yes.
Reynolds, yes. And Conti, no. Motion passes. There was I do have one last one. It's,
So we just voted on the amendment. I think
we voted on the amendment, yep, right, now we need to vote on the motion, which now reads, I entertain a motion to adopt a classification factor of 1.4 for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Did you second that, Reynolds? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say no. No. So it's 2 for, 1 against. Motion passes. From the last item I have is from the docket of October 4th, 2022. I move to strike from committee record a request for the treasurer, auditor, and VP Finance to appear in front of the Finance Committee on September 27, 2022 for updates.
Second.
Thank you, Cobus. Motion's in order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the business item for the Finance Committee. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cobus. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I declare the Finance Committee adjourned at 8:29.
Counselor Bennett, can I just cancel that committee, please? Yes. Thank you. Zoning and land use committees canceled this evening. Thank you.
Transportation and traffic is also canceled for this evening. Thank you.
IT and infrastructure is canceled this evening.
I'd like to call city property and claims to order at 8:29. And I have 3 motions. From the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to surplus and to be used as trade and value the following .45 caliber firearms: a Glock Model 21 serial numbers XBY 990, XBY 112, XBW 797, XBY 991, XHD 731, XBY 16, XBY 111, XBY 102.
Second.
Thank you. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We went through this a while back to remove the Glocks. I actually think they're destroyed now or sold.
They trade them in.
They trade them in and then
They get a big buck for them when they trade them in.
So, any questions or concerns regarding these?
No.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, that motion passes. From the docket of November 1st, 2022, I entertain a motion to accept the generous donation of Stop and Shop gift cards totaling $500 from disabled American veterans.
Second.
Thank you again. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. From the docket of October 4th, 2022, I entertain a motion to declare Coelho Middle School obsolete textbooks as surplus and available for disposition.
Second.
Again, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. All those, any questions, concerns regarding that?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. And that is all the business the city property and claim has. I would like to call for an adjournment.
You're all through, right?
I would like to call for an adjournment.
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:31.
Call Public Safety Emergency Management to order at 8:31. I have one motion this evening from the docket of October 18th, 2022. I entertain a motion to accept the FY22 Edward Bryan Memorial Justice Assistant Grant through the New Bedford Police Department and the U.S. Department of Justice for approximately $12,620 and accept any further grant amendments.
Second.
Thank you. This particular grant, there's no matching funds for, and we're fortunate we get it, but I think every year that I can remember. I talked to the chief because there was no backup how this money was going to be used, but he intends to use it for the crime analysis to update some software so we can further look at pornography, child abuse, soliciting over the internet. This is new software. It's a major software update for them that'll help. Yes, Laura?
So they're using it for their cyber crime?
Yeah,
That's good.
but that's what, I talked to Kyle, and that's what he told me he intends to use it for. We have good personnel over there in that department, so we help them any way we can, and this is, I don't want to say free money, because there's no such thing, somebody's paying for it somewhere, but we're lucky we're getting some of it. Any other questions, comments? If there's any other questions, I'll get them answered by next week. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Move to adjourn at 8:33.
Second.
And I think that's a wrap.
Well,
Can
no,
you cancel?
not.
Yeah.
The Personnel, Veterans, and Human Services Committee is not meeting tonight. We'll discuss business at a future time.
Special Committee on Tax Abatement Review is canceled tonight.
And does somebody want to cancel the special committee on classification and compensation?
I cancel, that's canceled tonight.
That's a wrap.